Good morning. Hand today's going to be Jack 3 offsuit. We are at a 10-0 game, and it's going to fold to me. And of course, I folded. Next player, open raise 2.3 big blind calls. This player's playing 12-10. Looks to be pretty tight, aggressive. Looking at his ranges, he's in mid position. Looks like 10%. Cutoff plays 10%. Button plays 18. I'm guessing mid position might be about 10-11%. Cutoff could be, could be on the larger side. But the reason we don't see it is that it's only 49 hands. So going up to 6 out of 49 or 7 out of 40 hand, 7 out of 49 is going to have an impact on that actual percentage. So I think we're kind of going for just a good solid tight range, and this is 11.8, and this is probably good. Try to get down to 10%. We're gonna have to give up some stuff. Might have to give up these hands, these pocket pair hands. Might have to give up some of the suited connectors. I'm leaving them in. This gets us to 12. I know that they're gonna be pretty low. But it doesn't look like he limps at all. Hasn't limped first in, and it's just kind of a question of what do we get rid of. That right there is 10%, and that could be like exactly what we're looking for. Let's go ahead and do this one actually. Instead of the suited connectors and the 5s and the 6s, let's give him the suited Broadway. So the other thing is, if you have those two, does he play like King 10, Queen 10, and like Ace 10? That gets us to 11%, and it puts us a lot tighter, fewer high cards, and more speculative hands. I think we're going to do this. Go 10.3%, and we're good. All right, so folds around. Big blind called. He's playing 33-0. No idea what, how to really build this range. We do know that in the big blind he's played 2 out of 3. So I could assume he's going to be pretty loose. Pre-flop call 1 out of 1. And we have called 2-bet from blinds with King 4 and 5-3 off. So I just look at a range like this. This is 66%. I made sure I had all of the King X hands. Maybe he has all the Queen X hands too. You've got your connectors and your one gappers. We don't know about his 3-betting range, so what I did was scale it. So I've got 50% for queens and ace king, and then 33% for aces and kings. Usually aces and kings are at least raises, but some players, some passive players, will just call with them because they're afraid to raise. So I think we have our ranges. We go to the flop. The flop comes down 6-5-5. That figures to miss everyone. Checks, no big surprise. Villain bets small. Maybe like 2/3. His c-bet stats actually pretty low here. He's in position, c-bet 3 out of 11. So it just kind of makes me think that maybe he's not doing this with a huge number of hands. And you could see, I do think this is probably a range where I'd be selective on what I'm going to c-bet, just because I think Villain's going to have a very broad range. His fold to c-bet, though, is fairly high, so 67% out of position. That might lean more towards just going ahead and c-betting everything that I have. Definitely, we can look at 2-card backdoor flush draws as a good one to kind of include. That's kind of like would be our ace high with the 2-card backdoor flush draws. Or maybe he's just doing that with his aces. This could be an unusual one. So normally it's like 27%. Maybe this is just one of those hands where he will go 100%. We'll go 100% here. See what develops. And he did bet smaller on the smaller side, and I do think like an overpair would probably do that too. We get villain 5 calls. The question is, what is villain going to be calling? I guess for his passivity, we're probably looking at not really raising. He does have bets. He has donk bet, so he could do that. There, he does have a 2 bet. So like raise the C bet. Yeah, so raise a C bet 1 out of 5. He could do that. I think this is pretty dry board, so I kind of feel like a full house. I mean, it's possible he could just check call. I think 3 of a kind could check call. Overpair could probably check call. Top pair would call. Probably pocket pair below the board. Probably the ace high would call. We'll say open ender and gut shots call. I think we'll do that 55%. So he does fold, and that's kind of why, probably C betting 100% is good in this spot. He's folding over 40% of the time. All right, turns to 10 of hearts. Goes check, check. So I do think this out of position player is going to have everything, but this guy checks. So at this point, I kind of think full house is out. I kind of think the overpair is out. Kind of think the top pair would have continued betting. Pocket pair less than the top card could check, and then we're going to say no made hand. And I think what we're going to do is exclude the flush draw and say that we would have imagined that flush draw would have continued betting here. So we go to river, 6 of hearts, improves on the board, and I think at this point, once you kind of check behind here, I think you're gonna have to check behind on the river. Note the villain is short, so I think on the turn, if he would have continued betting, you bet. If you bet pot, that gets to like 24, 25, and it's going to be almost just a little bit more than an all-in, which you could do. I do think you could do that. All right, so rivers to 6 of hearts. It goes check, check. So once the turn was checked, question is this guy going to lead out at all? I do think so. And we don't have a huge number of hands, but we do know he donks. And that was in his notes. Donks fought with top pair or better. So on a board like this, I do think a full house, like a strong full house, is probably going to be betting. Quads are probably going to be betting, hoping to get called. Probably even a weak full house is betting to get called. I think flush, everything else is just kind of checking. Flush and worse is checking because they're afraid of the full house that could be out there. So I think we're going to go with that range. This guy checks behind, and he just doesn't really have anything, so it's just all of these hands. So what are we looking at? Unpaired ace, king, king, queen, queen, jack, unpaired hand. And I think this guy could have, once it went check, check, I think this guy could have like really attacked with some of his nothing hands. Yeah, he's got like quads and stuff and full house that he's going to be betting, trying to get some value. I think he just goes in for all of these junk cards, all these missed straights. Could be used as a bluff too. Really, it's going to be hard for villain 1 to call. I do think he'll probably call. Be curious. Let's say, does he really have a 5 or a 6? because I think the bet's going to be fairly small. Pot's 8. You're not going to be betting, 37. I guess you could go 8, but I mean, even when you go pot, I mean, 8 big bets isn't a huge amount. All right, so villain shows a7. We didn't have a7 in his range. We thought he was going to be quite a bit tighter, but he's got ace high with 7 kicker. And then he shows the king 4 off. So does he have the king 4 off? No. We kind of took him off because it kind of goes back to the flop here, where we said, okay, ace high. He would have had all of those kings, so he would have had to at least play all of the king highs as well. Wow, that's just crazy. So 10 of hearts doesn't change, 6 of hearts doesn't change, has those 4s. So we didn't get it either hand here. This guy is a little unusual, but it's good to know that he's going to be able to raise first in with a7. So, with those few hands at 10% raise first in, or 10% VPIP, might be off a little bit. So let's get some notes. It goes 2.3. RFI 2.3, big blinds in hijack with a7 spades. He is in position. We'll say bets 33, check on 6 of spades, 5 of hearts, 5 of clubs, 10 of hearts, 6 of hearts. Ooh, hearts. All right. Called. Hijacks 2.3 big blind RFI in big blind with king 4. And that's kind of important to see. Is he check called with that hand? Just crazy. So I don't like this guy. The call's weak, pre-flop. What do you hope to accomplish against a player that's obviously playing tight? You figure to be way behind with that hand with the call, and you're short stacked. So even the implied odds, if you connect, aren't that great. This guy should have just folded. He didn't. He played it. And then the check call. I don't know what he's hoping for. I guess you can say he's got backdoor straight draw. But you don't. But that's about it. You're hoping for a 2, a 3, a 2, a 3, a 7, and an 8. I mean, 7 and 8 aren't even that great because, you're at the bottom end of the straight. So I don't like his check call. I'm sure he's check calling here because he doesn't believe the villain connected, which is fine. But then you have to have a plan to attack at the first sign the villain doesn't have anything. And he didn't do that. So king 4, check called the flop. Check called the flop. Okay. I can see that if you're saying that villain doesn't have anything. A 10 comes out, it goes check, and then the 6 of hearts comes out. Now that's your shot at attacking. You've check called, which means you could easily have a 5. You could have easily had a 6. And now you're going to challenge villain 1 because villain 1's going to suspect, well, do you really have that? And maybe he calls, especially if you go small. He might just call to keep you honest, bluff catch or whatever for a small bet. It's 10 NL. Some players will look at that and say, well, it's 10 cents or 20 cents or 30 or 50 cents. And not think too much about it. But I think, perhaps instead of kind of calling and then waiting for the turn, to see if villain's going to bet, this could be easily a 3-bet or a check raise here on the flop. If you don't think villain has anything, you check, he bets 1.6, you raise it up to 4 or 5. Raise it up here. That's going to put the pressure back on him. So then when the 10 comes out, you just fire out. I mean, you're representing the 5. You're representing maybe a 6, a6. You're representing an overpair. And you're still firing when that 10 comes out. I mean, it's going to make villain 1 uncomfortable. So I think this is kind of how I would approach it. I wouldn't have played king 4, but I'm going to think about some of the hands that I might have played. Even here with the short stack, I don't think I'm playing the suited connectors. But if I had a suited connector, let's say I had 8-9, 8-9 of hearts, spades, or clubs, then that would actually be a pretty decent check raise range. Check raising with backdoor potential on a board that doesn't figure to connect with villain. Villain is going to have, so if he has all of those aces, we're going something like that. And I'm going to give him more of the 5s and probably these too. So more of like 15-16%. But you can see all of these offsuit, all of these unpaired hands. It's gonna be tough for him. And yeah, he'll probably call on the flop, but then on the turn he's not gonna call unless he connected with the 10, or connected in some way, some flush draw or the 10 itself. And that's being aggressive. That wins the pot without really having anything. So I think that's kind of how we could attack it if I had the hand in that situation. But again, with the short stack, I don't think I'm calling with speculative hands. Not really call it because you don't have the implied odds to cover with it. And really, I'd be hard pressed to call it just because this player appears to be tight. And figure with those speculative hands, I'm calling like the worst of it. Basically, I'm calling the hope for a situation like this where I can attack. All right, so I think we're going to end here. Hopefully you enjoy the hand. Hopefully you spot some stuff that you could use in your game. Look tomorrow. I'll be posting another hand.